Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to part 4 of our 6-part Conspiracy Take the Crown full set review. Today we're going to look at all the red cards and some of the colorless cards, and if you've been watching the channel, you know we've already looked at the white, the blue, and black. Tomorrow we'll be back with green, and the following day we'll wrap things up with the colorless cards. So we're really working our way through the set, and we're more than halfway there now. Having said that, before we get started on the red cards, just a quick reminder, we have started an affiliation with Amazon. So if you check out the description below, you'll see some links for products on Amazon that are relevant to what we're talking about today. For example, you'll see conspiracy products. And if you go through those links and make a purchase, the channel will get a small percentage of that purchase. And that's a way, if you're going to buy cards anyway, to perhaps help out the channel. I know a lot of folks would like to do Patreon and stuff, but sometimes that's hard financially to do, and I completely understand that. So this is just another option to help us grow and get better equipment and start making a better product as we go forward. So I appreciate anyone who looks at those and considers that, and also, as always, I really appreciate our patrons as well on Patreon. So without any further ado, let's talk about red. Now, first off, be aware that, I mentioned this in the last few videos, you don't really feel super locked into an archetype in Conspiracy. There's some archetypes to be had out there, but if your draft starts going a little bit off the rails, don't feel like you're just going to automatically lose the games. The cards in the set are powerful enough that you could win with kind of a mishmash of different things and you're still going to be okay. Whereas recent sets in Magic history, you kind of had to lock yourself into an archetype, and if you fell out of that archetype, you were usually in trouble. It doesn't feel that way this time. Now, having said that, there's probably some slightly stronger archetypes for red. Boros, for example, feels like it's going to be the melee deck. You can go wide with a lot of creatures. There's a lot of cards that have the melee ability. You'll see some of those as we go through today. There's also a pretty good Is It deck, I think, to be had that's a little slower, a little more controlling. There's some Spell Matters cards that we'll look at today that are going to be helpful when you play not only the burn spells in red, and also some of the tempo plays we saw the other day in blue. And then there's also a nice Gruul beatdown deck. I mean, if you want to go red-green, traditionally red-green is all about the beats. This set, no exception. You got big creatures on both sides. So there's a lot of different things you can do. You'll see a lot of monstrosity, for example, between the Gruul cards. But like I said, if you don't fall into one of those archetypes and you have to just start going into a different direction, you can still have a really good deck on your hands. This doesn't lock you into archetypes as much as many recent sets have. So having said that, let's start looking at the cards. We're going to begin with Incendiary Descent. This is a red conspiracy at the common level. So we've been looking at this cycle, and there's one of these in each color. They're all commons, and basically it's a conspiracy that does something that's very traditional for the particular color. In this case, you get fire breathing. What's nice about this is conspiracies don't really cost you anything to play. I mean, you just put them in your command zone. This one starts face down, so it's kind of like a combat trick, and when you use it, and it stays out so you can use it again, just won't be a surprise next time. And you can link it to either maybe a creature with evasion, for example, that you think will be able to get across relatively easily, or if you had a common that maybe you got multiple copies of, you link it to that, and that way you might get further value out of it due to the fact you have a better chance of getting the card on the battlefield. There's a lot of different ways to look at this. I even would say, even if I'm not playing red, I could put this face down in my command zone and just kind of use it as a bluff. So like, why not, right? Because I really have nothing to lose. So I do like these. I mean, they're not like high picks. They're just kind of nice to haves, but they're added value. They're pretty good to pick up later in the pack. Besmirch. So this is a threaten effect that also goads the creature after you're done attacking with it. So I actually like that a lot. Threaten effects are great. This one is at sorcery speed, which is relatively normal. I mean, we have seen some recently at instant speed or some with madness that you can play on someone else's turn, and those are especially great, but they usually cost a little more. So paying 3, you doing this at sorcery speed can still be very, very productive, and just the fact that you then untap the creature and give it back, which is a little unusual because now it can again be used as a blocker. However, when it gets back to that opponent's turn, they have to attack with it, and if there's an option, they have to attack somebody else. So that's actually quite good. It keeps their defenses down, and it also guarantees action on the board, at least for another turn. And I mentioned this in the other videos, but you're going to see that as you go through Conspiracy. The cards and some of the mechanics, especially like Goad and Melee, for example, they're really trying to encourage early and often attacking. If you play the original Conspiracy, you know that typically you had to run a 45-50 card deck because it was very common for games to go long and people to just start getting decked, and that's a lot of times how games ended. Well, they're trying to prevent that this time around. I think they're doing a really good job. I mean, they're encouraging you to attack. They're giving you a lot of card draw to get to your threats quickly, being able to put pressure on your opponents. They want stuff to happen, and you can see that in the cards that they're putting in the set. Crown Hunter Hireling. This is actually very economical. A 4/4 for 5 is actually fine. The fact that it gives you the Monarch token almost guarantees you a card draw at the end of the turn, so I really like that for 5 mana. The downside being, okay, it can't attack unless the player has the Monarch token. So basically it's really about defending you when you have the token, attacking to get the token back. There's actually nothing wrong with that. I think this is a fine card. You maybe don't want like 3 of these in your deck, but I would be happy running 1. If I was really desperate for another 5-drop, I mean 2 would even be acceptable. Deputize Protester. Now this is a melee card and it has menace, so it's actually pretty good. So now this card, like I mentioned, Boros is kind of the melee deck. However, there's a lot of melee synergies in other colors. So if I start drafting red melee and I just can't get any white for some reason, don't feel like your whole draft is ruined and you're going to have a horrible deck. There's actually other options out there, which is really nice. I like how they did that. And again, that's probably the strategy to keep the game fluid and flowing. That way you don't have situations where you have a really bad deck and you have to play a long multiplayer game with it. So again, very good design. So having said that, yeah, this will be better in the Boros deck if you have more melee cards, but it's still a good card on its own too. Garbage Fire. First off, do you not love the fact that we have a magic card called Garbage Fire? That's awesome. So, and this is a Draft Matters card. Draft Matters cards, I think, are amazing. They bring a whole fun, almost like mini game element to the draft. This one is very strong in particular, I think. Now, it doesn't hit players, but I think that's good because that might be too powerful. But where this gets tricky is this gets better the later in the round that you draft it. So if you open this card, it's not a really good card because it will do 1 point of damage for 3 mana to a creature. Second pick, still not super good. 2 damage for 3, maybe it's playable. Once you get to your third pick, okay, now we're talking a little bit. 3 for 3. Fourth pick, 4 for 3. It gets better and better. So if you get this card passed to you, or if you open it, guess what? It's not going to wheel. I'll tell you that much. Because once you get up to about pick 4, 5, 6, 7, this becomes an extremely good card, right? No one's going to pass this up at some point, right? So you got to take that into account. It ain't coming back. Now, do I bite the bullet, though, and take it maybe earlier than I would like, hoping and banking on the fact that maybe I get another one later in the pack or in a different pack at a later point in the round, and then that number will carry over to all my copies. It's a little bit of a risk. Maybe I'm giving up a good card that I know is going to be good because I could have a great card on my hands. That's the type of decision you're going to have to make in this game, and that's awesome. Great design, great card individually, but awesome design on all of these Draft Matters cards. I've been really excited about them. Now, obviously, these don't fit into, say, constructed formats like Commander, but you could put this in a cube if you're looking for something else to do with it after you play your Conspiracy draft. Goblin Racketeer. And this is actually a pretty cool card. It's another one with Goad. You'll find a lot of Goad cards in the Is It colors, so it kind of complements the spells deck by giving you a way to lower your opponent's defenses as well as some of these other Goad creatures. But this one, 4/2 for 4, those are pretty good stats. I mean, it's going to at least trade with something significant, and the Goad ability is pretty nice. Again, it encourages action, and in this case, the action won't be necessarily against you, but maybe against somebody else in a multiplayer game. So yeah, you don't want a whole bunch of these, particularly in your deck at the 4 spot, but I'd be happy with at least a 1 of, and I think it would do a little bit of work in a multiplayer game. Next we have Renzo Havoc Razor, and this one maybe is my favorite red card. First off, I love the art, I love the flavor text, just the whole flavor of the card is amazing. I just want to say that first. Secondly, it's a 2/2, it's a little fragile, it's easy to get rid of, but it is legendary, so that's very important for Commander. And the fact of the matter is, if any of my creatures, doesn't have to be Renzo, but if any of my creatures now deal combat damage, I get to trigger one of these 2 abilities. And these are some pretty good abilities. The Goad, very relevant at certain times, especially in multiplayer. The exile the top card, very, very relevant, especially in draft formats where folks are going to be playing with smaller decks, because really this could amount to a mill strategy perhaps. And the fact that I can perhaps play some cards off the top deck too of my opponent, that's important as well. This card just does so much, and it doesn't have to get into the red zone. It can just sit back and have all your other creatures do the work for it, and you get huge dividends paid off to you. Now in a multiplayer game, this thing's going to have a target on its back. It's only 2. It's probably relatively easy to get rid of, especially in the conspiracy format. But it doesn't mean it's not a good card. I would certainly still run it. And hey, later in the game, when there's less opponents that have threats to take it out, it probably gets even better. Might even help you close out a game. And like I said, you're going up against decks that are going to be minimally, 40 to 50 card decks in conspiracy, right? Then this is going to be good. People are going to perhaps get milled by this at times. Now, aside from that, this is a really cool commander card. It can be a commander, a very affordable commander. So there, if it dies, well, that's okay. I'm able to replay it again multiple times during the game, and you play it at the right time when you know you're going to go in for an attack, and you just get value. You just get crazy value. Of course, you're probably not milling somebody in a commander game, but you could be playing some big spells off their deck in commander. It might be very, very worth it. Or also the goad mechanic is also good too in this case. This is another great cube card. I think this will see some legacy play too. I just feel like it has to just sit back. Maybe a goblin deck. You could play this, sit back, and have your goblins attack in. This could do some crazy things. I'm excited to see what this card does. I think there's a lot of potential in a lot of places for it. So great design. Very excited for this one. Renzo's Ruffians. This one's cool. Now, it costs 4 for a 2/2. That doesn't feel good. But it has melee, which means it's attacking in minimally as a 3/3. So, okay, it's a little bit better. But also, when it attacks in, hits an opponent, then it also does damage to all the other opponents. So that's nice value, I think, for 4, even if it is 2 on color. So unlike the last card, yeah, granted, this probably isn't going to be like a legacy card or anything, but I think this is a really good multiplayer card. So this is great in the draft, and it's also going to be a good commander card, I think, in some decks. Piretic Hunter. Here's another Draft Matters card, very similar in some ways to the one we looked at earlier. This time around, you're deciding at what point is a menace creature for 5 worth it. Is a 1/1? Probably not. Is it 2/2? Probably not. Is it 3/3? A little better. Is it 4/4? Okay, I'm on board with that. Is it 5/5? It's awesome, right? So almost all the same things I said about Garbage Fire you could say about this card. It really makes you think about when and how you're going to draft it. If you draft it too early, it's not great, but maybe you can get a second copy later along the line, and that would make both copies better if you get it at the right time. You just have to really think about where you want to pick it up in the draft. Skyline Despot, a very good limited card. I do like this. It's a rare. You won't see it all the time. It's a little pricey. It's 7, but you get a 5/5 flyer, and you know what? You also get the Monarch token, so that means you're almost guaranteed a card draw. That really makes me feel good about the casting cost. And you know what? If you can hang on to that Monarch token, or if you have ways to get the Monarch token as an ability, we're going to see a land actually in a couple days, and I think there's a green creature that can do it too, that will potentially allow you to take that Monarch token back at ability speed, so you could do it right before your turn starts, for example. But as long as you have that Monarch token, you get yourself another 5/5 flyer, and that can get kind of crazy kind of quick. So there's a lot of ways to try to get the token, try to keep the token, but if you can do it, this card really pays off big for you. And if you can't, still a 5/5 flyer, so that's not the worst thing in the world by any means either. So I do like this a lot in limited. I do feel like this is another way to maybe even incorporate this into a commander deck to get the Monarch token into play into commander. That could actually be kind of fun, especially if you have some ways to get it back and maybe your opponents aren't prepared for that. It's also a good cube card, I think, too, again, if you want to play with that Monarch token. Subterranean Tremors. I really like this one a lot. It's a mythic. Feels a little bit like Earthquake initially, although it doesn't affect players. It takes out creatures without flying. However, it has additional abilities that if X is 4 or more, you also destroy all artifacts, and if it's 8 or more, you get yourself an 8/8 Red Lizard token. Now, first off, before I go any further, the art's incredible. Again, I love the theming. I love the top-down design of this card. It's fantastic. As far as playing this card, it has a very powerful effect to play in any multiplayer game. I mean, this will be great in draft. It's going to be great in commander as well. Now, imagine taking out all the creatures without flying and getting yourself an 8/8 and wiping out artifacts. It's very relevant in Commander. Maybe not as much in Conspiracy. There's a few good artifacts, but not that many. In Commander, there's a lot of mana rocks and things like that, so you can really mess up someone's mana base with this ability there. And you know what? If you can get the 8/8 out of it too, that way if you do have some flyers still around, you can attack in. They almost have to chump block. Yeah, this card is pretty awesome. So it's also good in cubes. I can throw it in a cube and be very happy with it. And could this see some play like in Vintage or Legacy? Vintage has fast mana, and artifacts are a big deal. If you're able to wipe the board of artifacts against like a workshop deck or something, that could be pretty backbreaking. So I don't know, is it fast enough? I guess what the question would be. I'd have to kind of test it out and see. As long as you had fast mana, maybe you could pull it off and do a little bit of damage during the game. But it remains to be seen. I'd like to see what happens with this card. I feel like it at least has some potential. Volatile Chimera. This is another Draft Matters card in a way, and it's kind of interesting. Now, here's the thing. It costs 3 for a 3/2, so it's a very playable limited card no matter what. Once you decide to play it and you pull the trigger on it, then you can exile 3 or more creature cards you drafted that aren't in your deck and kind of set those aside, and then this card can turn into one of those at random. So this is wacky. I don't like high variance cards. I don't like things happening at random, but if I have 3 good creatures that I pick that I am comfortable not putting in my deck, this becomes even better than a 3/2 for 3, and it does allow me during the draft to maybe pick up some creatures in different colors that I know I'm not going to be in if they're strong enough to combo with this. That's an interesting thought for a draft. It makes some of your maybe late picks a little bit better. So I don't know. I don't know how good this will be. I don't like the variants, but I do like the fact that you can be creative and do some crazy stuff, especially late picks and packs, and pick up stuff that normally just would be sitting in your sideboard the whole time. But like I said, at the end of the day, it's still 3/2 for 3, so it's very playable and limited. I kind of think about cubes in this card, and I kind of wonder, like, would this be like really crazy, super powerful cube with a lot of great creatures? I mean, imagine if the choices were like Emrakul, Craterhoof Behemoth, or Ulamog or something, right? Like, that could be pretty insane. So that maybe that's where this card really shines. Burn Away, and this is the start of our reprints in red. All the cards we looked at this point were new cards. So our first reprint, Burn Away, is a good one. It's 6 damage for 5. That's actually very decent at instant speed. And the fact that it wipes out the graveyard if you happen to kill the creature, that's gravy on top. That matters probably more so in cubes, for example, or even in Commander, than it does in the Conspiracy draft. Red has a little bit of graveyard synergy, but not a whole lot. So it will matter some of the time. But even so, I mean, like I said, paying 5 for a 6 at instant speed, 6 damage at instant speed is good. Burning Wish, very good reprint. I'm glad this came back. This sees play in many of the Legacy Storm builds, and this is kind of nice. If you're trying to put that deck together and you need Burning Wishes, well, here's another opportunity to hopefully get them a little bit cheaper than they were. This is a really good card in cubes as well and Commander. As far as the limited draft goes, it's okay there. I mean, if you have something in your sideboard that you want to either hide or maybe just, you can still basically use it as a tutor as long as you're comfortable taking that good spell and putting it in your sideboard and not in your deck. There's still value to be had here. So this is a good card. You might not always run it in limited, but it's fantastic in so many other formats. You'll be probably very happy to open one, and I'm just glad to see it back. Great reprint. It really hasn't had a true reprint. Originally, it did get a promo card, but that was it. Other than the promo, you just had the original version. So it's kind of nice to see another copy of this out there. Charmbreaker Devils. This card always overperformed for me in limited when I played with it in the past. Like, it doesn't look like it should be as good as it is. And you look at it, it's like 6 for a 4/4. Okay, but just the fact that at the beginning of your upkeep, you return an instant or sorcery at random from your graveyard. That's every upkeep that this thing stays alive. You get to take a spell back. And sometimes if you have only 1 or 2 spells in your deck, which happens a lot in limited, you might be able to recur something very strong a number of times throughout the game. That gets kind of crazy. I'm usually not a huge fan of the random element, but it is still card advantage. So even if it's random, it's still good. And just the fact that when you play an instant or sorcery, it gets +4/+0. And you couple that with the fact that it's already a 4/4, that's a pretty powerful creature too. So I love this card actually. It's not something you want necessarily 2-3 of in your deck at the 6th spot, but you run a 1 of, you get this thing out, you'll be pretty happy with the results, especially in the Izzet deck. Coordinated Assault. This maybe is one of the best combat tricks I've seen in a long time. It's cool to see it get a reprint, but this card is kind of nuts. And you know it's kind of nuts because they put it at uncommon, and they put some crazy powerful stuff in common in the set. So you know they've tried this out and was like, uncommon. It costs 1. I'd be happy to pay 1 at instant speed to give a creature first strike. I would be extremely happy to do it for 2 creatures, and I would be elated to also give those 2 creatures +1/+0. That's what this card does. Super good combat trick. Really good in any deck. It might shine a little more perhaps in a build like a Boros build, but it's going to be good if you have creatures. Play it. It's awesome. Ember Beast. These are fine for the 3-drop. Be careful with these though. Make sure you're running a creature heavy deck. Like for example, if you're in the Izzet deck and you have a lot of spells like tempo spells and stuff, this card becomes very bad very quick and you don't want to play it in that deck. But if you're running the Boros deck, for example, or the Gruul deck, this becomes a lot better. So as long as you're comfortable with this in your 3-drop as one of your cards, this can be good. These sometimes are better in multiples just because they can complement each other. Next we have Fiery Fall, and first off, yes, basic land cycling is going to be key on this card. If you're trying to go deep with your colors, maybe you're trying to play a 4th color or even a 5th color, playing good stuff, something like that, you're going to need a lot of these cards when you draft. They're very good at smoothing out your mana and your color, and that's probably the main reason they're here. However, I will say that I don't mind running one of these even just for the spell's ability, even if I'm not trying to use the basic land cycling, just because 5 damage to a creature at instant speed, even though it is 6, it's actually not bad. So if that's one of my options for burn, it's not a horrible option. But really, this card's going to shine if you're trying to smooth your colors and your mana. Flame Slash. This is good removal. It's sorcery speed, but it only costs 1. Notice this is at the common level. We saw the black cards yesterday, and there's some amazing spot removal in black at the common level. So this is a strong version that red's getting. Maybe not quite as good as some of the cards we saw in black, but still a very good one. You'll be happy to run this, especially in the Izzet deck if you're trying to tempo a little more. But it's good, again, in any build. Gang of Devils. This one I'm not as excited about. I don't like paying 6 for a 3/3. Now the ability is good. When this thing does die, I mean, being able to take 3 damage and split them anywhere I want can be quite good. Maybe not quite as good in a multiplayer game as a single player game. This is probably better later in the game. But what this card is trying to accomplish is, this is one of red's, hey, you know what, maybe you don't want to attack me cards. White has a whole lot of them. The other colors have about 1 or 2. And they complement the white really well. So if you're in Boros, there's another option if you want to go that route to slow things down and defend yourself. But these are ways to kind of defend yourself with these big awkward cards while your small creatures just get in and attack and use their melee ability, stuff like that. It's also good sometimes in Izzet, again, if you're trying to slow the game down a little bit. So there's definitely a place for this card, but really know that it's not meant to be an offensive threat as much as it's meant to be a defensive threat. If you're looking for that in your deck, then it's going to be okay. Goblin Balloon Brigade. This is alright probably in that melee style deck, just because it's a small creature, it's a 1-drop, you can pay 1 to give it flying, so that evasion goes a long way. It may keep this alive a little longer. You attack some random opponent for 1, and then your melee attacks just are that much bigger against the other opponents. That's really why this card's here, I think. Other than that, it's probably not really playable. It is a cool reprint though, because it is from Alpha Beta Unlimited, and that's awesome. Goblin Tunneler. This is an okay 2-drop. I mean, I don't like 2-drops that are 1/1s typically, but this ability is actually pretty strong, and there's a lot of things you can do with this. The fact that an opponent might not be able to block with one of their creatures, even though it's a small creature, could mean the difference between surviving the turn and not surviving the turn. So there's a lot of power to be had here. It looks innocuous, but it can really surprise you. So I'm happy to run some of these in the 2 spot, especially if I'm looking for 2-drops. A lot of times you are in drafts, so this is not a bad one. It can do some work, especially in the late game. You'd be surprised. Gratuitous Violence. Here's what's interesting about this card in the Conspiracy Draft. There's not a lot of great enchantments and artifacts in the set, so it doesn't really encourage people to play their artifact and enchantment removal that much, especially considering you don't really sideboard in these games. You play one long game, and that's kind of that. Which is really intriguing for this card. You could really surprise people with this, because let's face it, if people aren't playing removal for this, you could really run away with the game. This is a very powerful effect, and the fact that if someone even is playing removal, they're probably not playing more than, say, like one disenchant, right? So if they've used it on something else and it's gone, well, it might just be gone. And later in the game, as players go out, that's going to reduce the options for players to get rid of this. This could be quite good and could surprise some people, so keep an eye on opportunities to play this. It is a little heavy in the red department, obviously, with 3 red and 2, but it is a 5 casting cost spell. It's meant to be played later in the game, and if you do, it could work out well for you. This is also a good card, I think, in Commander and some cubes too. Next we have Guttersnipe. So this is kind of a tale of 2 cards. It just depends on what you're trying to do with your deck. First off, the reason Guttersnipe's here is because it deals 2 damage to each opponent when you cast an instant or sorcery spell. This is very, very good if you have instant and sorcery spells in your deck, and a good amount of them. So you probably want to be in that Izzet deck. A lot of the tempo plays and stuff will also do damage to all opponents. Keep in mind, this is a 2/2 for 3, and it's going to be a little bit fragile. It will have a target on its back, so there will be some direct damage coming at this thing at some point. But you can still get a lot of value out of it in the meantime in the right deck. If you aren't playing a heavy instant sorcery deck, then this isn't very good and you'll want to skip it. But it just depends on what you're doing with your deck. Aside from that, it's also a good commander card and can be good in some cubes too. Hamlet back Goliath. This is interesting. Now, this is an expensive card, but you're getting a lot here. I mean, it costs 7 for a 6/6, but it doesn't have evasion, which is a little awkward. However, this kind of shines in a multiplayer game because anytime anyone wants to play a creature, it's going to just make this thing huge. Now, granted, it dies to removal easily, like Murder, for example, which is a common in the set. But at the same time, later in the game, you could find some value here. And if you're looking for something that's really high-end curve, there's not a whole lot of options in the set. So if you're in red and you're looking for a 7-drop to hopefully just have one big spell in your deck, this is a fine one. You may want to just hold on to it, though, till some players start going out, especially with any luck, anyone playing black. And at that point, it probably will become better once you get down to 1 or 2 players left in yourself. So yeah, it definitely has its place. It probably won't always make your cut, but it is good. It's going to shine a little more multiplayer. Next we have Havengull Vampire. This is one of those cards, if your opponents kind of catch on, they're going to get rid of this thing quick. And it can be a little awkward because it's a 2/2 for 4. That doesn't feel super good. But if this thing can live, it can become very big, but it doesn't have evasion. That's another downside. Now, having said that, every time it gets in for damage, or if any other creature dies on the board, it gets a counter. And that can get kind of nuts, kind of fast. And even if it doesn't have evasion, eventually this could be a big creature that could start to run away with the game at some point, and will at the very least need to be chump blocked. Now, I don't know if that's going to pan out a lot of the time, unfortunately. I just feel like this is one of those creatures that your opponents are going to catch on and probably get rid of it pretty quick. And there's a lot of good 4-drops out there. So I'm not saying this is unrunnable. I'd probably want to run at least one of, but you don't want to fill your 4-drop spot with this because players are going to be savvy. They're probably going to get rid of it before it gets really good. Next we have Hurlyburly, and typically I would say, okay, this is a card you leave in your sideboard so you need it, but since you don't sideboard in Conspiracy, if you have access to this, running a 1/0 might be just fine. There are some 1 toughness creatures that are relevant out there, and white comes to mind. If someone's playing like the melee deck, this could put them back a little bit. So it's nice to have an answer to something like that, but again, you don't want to necessarily run a lot of these because sometimes they're going to be kind of dead cards. Ill-Tempered Cyclops. There's a lot of value here. This is a good 4-drop, actually. I mean, a 3/3 for 4 with Trample. It's basically a Hill Giant with Trample. I like that. And later on, I can spend 6 and it becomes a 6/6 Trampler. Yeah, sign me up. This is a common. This is just a good beater. When you want a beater, this is a good one to pick up. Kiln Fiend. This one's okay. I don't like paying 2 for a 1/2. This is obviously better in a Izzet build if you have a lot of sorceries and instants. If you don't have a lot, I mean, steer clear of it completely. But even if you do, you have to ask yourself, Is trading with another creature good enough? Because that's probably what this thing's going to be doing. I mean, for 2, it probably is, but the fact of the matter is, okay, it pumps when you play instants and sorceries, that's great, but it doesn't have evasion, it doesn't pump toughness, so at the end of the day, it's going to trade with a 2/2, and okay, is that worth it? Like I said, and it is a deck, running one of these is probably fine. Sometimes you just need 2-drops. 2-drops are incredibly important in draft, so if you need them, he's there, but a lot of times you probably won't run this one. Next we have Ogre Sentry, and this is Red's second "Hey, don't attack me" card. So it's okay. It's a 2-drop, which again, like I mentioned before, can be very relevant. You're getting a 3/3 defender. This is probably fine sometimes in the Izzet build where you're trying to slow down the game and get to your tempo spells and stuff. However, I don't know, maybe the Boros build is not that great because the 2-drops in the white color in particular are all about aggressiveness and trying to get across with melee and so forth, and you don't really want creatures that can't attack if you're on that strategy. So it just depends on your build. Most of the time you're probably going to skip this one, but it does have its place in certain decks. Stone Shock Giant. This was a good limited beater last time around. I think it still is good. 5/4 for 5, I don't mind paying that, and later on I can monstrous it. It gets bigger and I can maybe get in for some pretty big damage in the attack if I'm lucky. Yeah, I don't mind running one of these at least in my deck. Sulphurous Blast. This can actually be a very strong card, especially in a more controlling build like Izzet. Obviously, you probably don't want to play this in the white melee deck, for example, because you may have a lot of small creatures. Might not be bad in Gruul, though, where your creatures are going to be much larger in most cases. But this is nice because it's a panic button. It helps just sort of sweep the board, and you can kind of decide whether you want to play it on an opponent's turn and do 2 damage to everything, or just play it on your turn and do 3. Just depends on what the board state looks like. This card feels a little bit like Anger of the Gods in some ways if you played with that card. It's actually pretty decent, and it's relatively versatile. It's not for all decks, like I said. If you have a lot of small creatures, you probably don't want to run this, but it's a nice panic button regardless. Tormenting Voice. This is the card that just keeps getting reprinted. And, you know, it's a good card. There's nothing wrong with it. And you don't mind playing it here either. Obviously, it works very well with some of those spells matters creatures that we've seen earlier, and it helps you get through your deck a little bit faster. It's very nice. The discard ability isn't going to be quite as relevant. You can't use that to your advantage as much as you could in, say, Eldritch Moon, Shadows over Innistrad block. But, yeah, maybe with black, there are a few occasions where you can find a little bit of value with that, but it's probably going to be relatively rare. For the most part, this is just more about digging deeper in your deck, and it's probably a little better in the Izzet build. Trumpet Blast. This is a card that Gruul wants, or perhaps Boros wants for the most part. You're all about beating down, and you're just going in for that big attack. And these things stack pretty nicely. If you happen to have a couple copies of these at the end of the game, you can put somebody away. Again, maybe not as good in a multiplayer experience as a one-on-one game, but especially late in the game, you can use this to take out 1 or maybe even 2 opponents. This card can be quite good, actually. Twin Bolt. This is a very versatile card. I like versatility in my cards. Let me decide, do I want to do 2 to something or 1 to 2 different things? Even a simple decision like that gives the card a lot more value. This one's pretty good. It's at common, you can pick it up pretty easily. Now we move into some of the multicolor cards. So we're going to start with a brand new one. It's Adriana, Captain of the Guard. And this is a Boros card. It's a 4/4 for 5, which is kind of par for the course for Boros. But the fact that it has melee means it's minimally attacking in as a 5/5, so that's kind of awesome. And it also gives all your other creatures melee. Fantastic. So obviously this really shines in the Boros build if you're able to draft that with all your melee creatures, all the small creatures going wide. That could be kind of awesome, right? But this is really going to shine, I think, in Commander. This brings the melee mechanic into Commander in a big way by giving you a card that potentially could be your Commander. And imagine just playing this card, giving everything melee, just attacking bunches of players, just getting it for crazy damage, and when she does die, you're able to recast her again. I think that's pretty awesome and a great way to bring this mechanic into that format. Again, I think this will be a good cube card as well. So no doubt, this card will see a lot of play in a lot of different places, which is pretty cool. I really want to kind of see the social experiment that will be the Commander deck with this card. I think that will be really amazing. I'll try to build that if I have time, but if somebody gets a chance to build it, let me know. I think that would be really cool. A Crowan Hoplite. This, of course, is a reprint and is another Boros card. It goes really well with Boros is trying to do the kind of all-in on the aggressiveness strategy. Dragonlair Spider. Now, this card was originally printed in Planechase 2012. It got a reprint as a foil in Commander's Arsenal, which was very, very limited. But that's the only place where you can find this card until now. This is an awesome reprint. Great selection here because this is a killer Commander card. This card's been amazing in Commander, and it's going to be good for you in multiplayer here. But again, this is just a card that has already proven itself in Commander games. First off, it has reach, which is very relevant considering a lot of commanders have flying. 6 toughness, also very relevant in Commander. There's a lot of cards that will do 5 damage, but not as many that do 6 damage directly to creatures. And just the fact that every time an opponent plays a spell, you get a 1/1 token, that's awesome. So this card's incredible. I'm really glad they picked this for a reprint. It just makes so much sense in this set, and it's a reprint that was really desperately needed. This would cost you a few dollars if you try to pick it up in the secondary market, so hopefully the value will go down a little bit with more copies in the wild. It's really meant for multiplayer games like Commander and Conspiracy for sure. And here's our last card of the day. It's Gruul War Chant. This is another reprint, and it's another enchantment, so this could surprise some folks. This does everything Gruul wants to do, obviously. It makes creatures bigger, lets them attack in with menace so they get some evasion. That's kind of awesome, actually. And this could be game-ending, especially late in a game. If your opponents can't get rid of this thing, you have a huge advantage for the whole game, and that's pretty important. This is a card that will get better as the game goes on. So late in the game, this could even be a finisher to get rid of that last opponent or two. This is a pretty big deal, not only for Gruul decks, but maybe you're just playing Boros and Splashing Green, for example. This is still really good in a build like that too. Really, if you have a lot of creatures, doesn't really matter what colors you're playing, this is going to be a good card as long as you can cast it, right? Fantastic choice for a reprint in Conspiracy for sure, and it's yet another way to speed along games and make sure games come to an actual conclusion. So, having said that, those are all of the red cards, so we're getting there. Tomorrow we're going to be back with all the green cards, and Saturday we'll finish things up with all the colorless cards. So as always, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks as always for watching. This video, like all my videos, was made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Even a donation of $1 helps me to keep growing this community and creating better quality content for all of you. Check out our Patreon page for exclusive giveaways and future goals for the channel. If you haven't yet had a chance to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the MTG news, spoilers, set reviews, product openings, or finance videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.